Welcome back to MTN Live in the Mountains. Well, now I'm joined on the couch with Senator Dan Soucek, and he's representing the North Carolina's 45th District up here. It's a lot of our local counties around here: Alexander County, Ashe, Avery, Watauga, Wilkes, and Caldwell County. Senator Soucek, thank you for coming on and speaking with me today. Really
my pleasure.
I wanted to talk to you, too, about some of the local issues that really affect us here in the northwestern part of the state, too. I mean, some of the more global issues, national issues, I guess, are kind of more out there. But what are some of the things that are really taking effect here in North Carolina right now?
Well, what's been on everybody's mind and what's been on our plate these last few weeks has been the Senate budget.
Right, okay.
Every 2 years we have to set a 2-year budget.
Okay.
And the first step is that the governor gives a plan, and then it goes to either the House or the Senate, and then it alternates. So last biennium, the House began, and this time the Senate begins. So we have to come up with a plan. We set forth a budget, and then it goes over to the House. So it's really just the next step in the budget. It's a budget recommendation, but there's still a lot of discussion and negotiation to go on before we see a final plan.
Okay. Do you have an idea how that final plan's looking right now? I know with the Republican Party nationally, as far as our national budget goes, definitely want to try and reduce some of our spending a little bit. I mean, we are still technically, if you look at the Paul Ryan budget plan, going to increase spending every single year, but we're not going to raise. His plan is to not raise taxes and try and balance the budget. So how does that work at a state level?
Well, one of the things that we have, which I think is a good restriction, is we're required to have a balanced budget.
Okay.
So we can't spend money we don't have.
So you have to have a balanced budget
constitutionally.
At the state level.
Yes.
Now, is that, you said constitutionally, but you smile. It is really implemented that way? You have to do it?
It is.
Okay.
And right now we have about a 2.3% growth.
Okay.
And that's important. When you look at inflation, you look at population growth, there's no way to have this same amount of money provide the same services for a growing population.
Growth, right. Because as the population grows, we have to spend a little bit more, I guess, because technically we have more people. And
that's a conservative amount. I think it's a healthy amount of growth, 2.3, but it still is a tremendous challenge.
Okay.
The big driver of this is that next 2 years we're expecting to have over $1 billion of overruns in Medicaid, which means the rest of the government has to find a way to really cut $1 billion just to pay for Medicaid, which is an out-of-control federal mandate that provides a great service for a lot of people in need, but is not a system that's being run in a way that we can even predict or manage the costs. And so it affects everything we do in the state budget and makes every other agency have continuing challenges. And that's been the hardest part of the budget, is how you manage that deficit.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the things that are going to be cut to keep Medicaid afloat like you were talking about?
Well, if you look across the board, from transportation to our judicial system to education, it's 1-2% cut. So it's pretty flat. It's pretty much what they had last year, just a slight decrease.
Now, when you say a 2% cut, is that can't be too much of a cut there, really, though, is it?
Okay. No, it's basically considered a flat budget item.
Okay.
But realizing that we had to cut $2.5 billion 2 years ago, so they're not starting from a great place. They're starting from all these agencies from a place of great challenge, in great need of more funding, but it's not there. And we promised the taxpayers 2 years ago, we promised them a year ago when we ran for office, that we were going to balance a budget, make government more efficient, and we were not going to raise taxes. And so in that constraint, because that is the economic model that's going to serve this generation and the next generation, is to have a sound fiscal foundation, and that's what we're still committed to do, and that makes us make very difficult decisions.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about bringing businesses in here to the state level and stuff like that, we talk about, state income taxes as well right now. And North Carolina has a pretty strong state income tax compared to Tennessee, right next door to us. Right. So why wouldn't a new business maybe coming into the high country just say, hey, let's just go to Tennessee? Why stay in North Carolina?
That is a great question. In fact, that's what they do. Okay. You talk to people, we have the least competitive tax system of any of our neighboring states. If someone's coming to look in the Southeast and a big business is coming, they're going to look at Tennessee, they're going to look at Virginia, South Carolina, and say, that's a little bit better environment for our business.
Well, look at even gas prices, too. Just, the state tax on our gases out here is what, like 30-cent tax on every gallon of gas or something like that, I think is what I read.
And that goes back to how the Transportation and Highway Trust Fund, in my opinion, has been mismanaged for years, and we're reforming that as well. And there's a whole bunch of reform of policies and of financial matters that we are looking at shoring up in North Carolina, so we have a bright future. And you mentioned taxes, and that's one of the bold initiatives that the Senate has right now, is a complete tax reform package.
Right.
We've got, since 1930 or so, we've pieced together a tax plan. I looked at the tax code. It is a book this thick, filled with exemptions and all different kinds of special deals for different companies. We are cleaning that out with the idea of lowering corporate tax and personal income tax to zero in the near future. Can't do it all at once. We've got a very aggressive plan over 3 years. But what that does is that makes North Carolina the place where people want to live, want to work, and businesses want to move to. And it's complicated to unravel a complicated system and make it simple.
Right.
But we're committed to doing that. We've got a proposal coming out next week. I think the bill will be presented next week, if I understand correctly. And we're going to be working towards that type of tax reform. So if the next generation we want North Carolina to be, right now I think it's the 44th most business competitive in this country. That's 6 from the bottom.
Yeah.
And this tax plan will put it in the top 10. We want to be one of the 5 most competitive states in the country, and we think we can be. But it's going to take these kinds of tough economic decisions in order to move us forward.
Now, with this plan, is it going to be passed? Is there a likelihood that it's going to be passed? I didn't know how that works. I mean, when you talk about just control of the Senate in a national stage, I believe it's still with the Democratic Party, if I'm not.
Right, but we're talking, this is a state level
Right,
plan.
with the state level. That's why I'm wondering, how does it work at a state level?
Well, the benefit we have is we've got a conservative-led government for the House, the Senate, and the governorship.
Okay.
So we've got the pieces in place to be able to make the decision without a lot of partisan bickering that is designed for political advantage rather than economic advantage. But it's difficult because whenever you change a tax plan, everybody has to adjust.
Right.
The goal is for everyone, or as many people as possible, to be immediately better off and everyone to be better off in the future. But when you say better off with a tax plan, when you reduce the income tax to zero, your paycheck at the beginning of the month is going to be larger.
Yes.
But you're also not going to be able to deduct your mortgage from your state income. You still come from the federal, which is most important. So someone says, I'm losing my mortgage deduction. Well, only because you're not sending money to the government and then them sending part of it back to you.
Yeah, but you're actually making more paycheck to paycheck.
Right. You keep more from the beginning. You keep the government out of it. But the big picture is good. But the small picture of what it looks like maybe with mortgage deduction looks bad.
Right.
But not when you've kept more money in your paycheck at the beginning of the month than you would have gotten back. That's a net gain, and that's the picture we're trying to
show. So overall, you think more people are going to be able to keep more money than they're actually giving in their taxes to maybe the state government?
Over 3 years, this tax plan would be the largest tax cut in state history.
Wow. Okay.
And it still has room for growth, like the 2-3% growth we talk about, to keep having the services. But with more people being able to keep more of their own money and a business environment where businesses can grow, that creates an economic environment which is great for families and working people, but it also is great for the long-term budget of the state because we can tax less and less. The bigger the economy, the less of the economy you have to tax to still meet those needs. Right. So we can keep lowering taxes and keep growing businesses.
That's great. What are some of the other things that we might be seeing change in the future here?
I think the budget and the tax reform are the two really big things.
Yeah.
But one of the things, even in transportation, we're not just looking at one area. Historically, a lot of times transportation decisions have been made by which party was in power and who was elected in that district, and the money would go and follow the political influence. We're coming up with, across state government, data-driven information. So they say, what is the greatest need in the state? What is going to benefit the state most with these transportation dollars, and have them move there rather than picking individual winners.
Right.
It's a much fairer way, and we want it to be now and in the future that it's not a political decision, but it's an economic decision based on where the needs of the state are. And those are some major undertakings that are going on in transportation.
Right. I've also read some of the stuff on your website there about some of your beliefs, especially on, with voting, presenting a photo ID as well. I know, I was thinking about that even back during the election. I know a lot of people. You heard rumblings of people voting in different areas and voting in different states, and you don't need a photo ID to vote in some spots. I just find that amazing to me.
It is, and that's one of the strange things is that most people don't even realize that it's not required in North Carolina. In fact, if you go to vote and you show ID, they'll just push it back across the table saying, oh, we don't need that, we can't use that.
Okay.
And it seems like a very reasonable thing to allow people to have confidence that their electoral system is working. When you walk in and all you say is, here's my name and address, and they check you off the list, it creates some suspicion. And we want the public to be engaged in the electoral process, and having confidence in the system is important. And here's a little inside politics on what goes on with voter ID is this is something I thought we were just going to move forward with in the first week of the election.
Right.
And people say, well, why are you waiting on this? Well, there's a federal court decision going on right now regarding photo ID. Instead of enacting a law that may or may not comply with the Supreme Court's decision, we want to wait for that decision, which should be coming out in June. We'll still have time to enact it, so that we've got a clean law that doesn't go through a litigation which costs money and delays things, but is a simple law that complies with federal law, court mandates, and gives people the confidence that they can go into election, they can vote, and the person that they're voting for, or they say they are, is who they are. It's simple, and I really think it's the right decision.
And by passing this photo ID, if we're able to get that through too, it'll restrict people to really only have one vote. I guess essentially you could, in some states or in some areas, vote twice. Is that possible? I know it's illegal and kind of not good, but yeah, I guess you kind of could maybe get away with it.
You could. And there are different ways to get around the system. This is the way that makes the system a little cleaner.
Right.
But I honestly believe that the worst thing that can happen to a population or in a republic is when they just feel that their vote doesn't count, that they can't change government, and so they divorce themselves from the process.
Yeah, and I think if you have that, like something like that happening too, you think, well, what's the point if somebody's going to go out there and cross my vote out 2-3 times? Really,
Right.
I mean, so.
So in getting people engaged and stay engaged in the process is an integral part of
Right.
government. That was one thing I've learned in state government I think was very refreshing, is everyone thinks big government, they can run over, they can do whatever they want. An active, informed population can run over government. The only reason why government can run over people's rights is when people stay uninformed or unengaged. And that was encouraging. When people come with facts and with numbers and with passion, the government yields to the people. I've seen it over and over again, and I'm proud of that, because that's what it should do. You should have the people determining what their government is.
That's great. Well, Senator Soucek, I want to know a little bit about maybe some of your aspirations too for your future. Do you have any? Do you like staying here at the local level?
I really like the local level. I've been fortunate enough to be co-chair of education, not only the policy side but also the funding side, and that has been a challenging and exhilarating and heartfelt job.
Right.
We had to make some very difficult decisions. I was Facebooking with a local teacher today as we were discussing some of the challenges in the budget, what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we're trying to go, how we communicate this. Because one of the things that these budget decisions do is they make sometimes teachers feel that they're not valued, and that is the least thing that we want to do.
Right.
Our teachers are one of the most important employees we have in state government. The impact they have on our future, of our kids, is staggeringly important. And so we're trying to communicate what we're doing within the bounds of our constitutional mandate to balance a budget, and how we fund our most important things. When we look at transportation, we look at our judicial system, and most important is our education.
Right.
And that's what the reforms, that's what the funding is designed for. So that
It's a big issue.
is a big issue, and that's what I've been spending time on, and I feel like I still have a great deal of impact that I can have. And as long as I'm making an impact where I am, that's where I want to be.
That's great. Well, Senator Soucek, we're running out a little bit of time. Hopefully we can get you in here again and talk a little bit more on education as well. We really do appreciate you coming in and speaking with me today.
Thank you, and I don't want to neglect that this is Memorial Day weekend,
Yes.
and really want to thank all the soldiers
Yes.
and families that have sacrificed so much for our country.
Former veteran as well, and still serving a little bit, I know.
A little bit.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you again for speaking with me.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a minute with more MTN Channel 18.